TXM, it appears that many in the mainstream left are appalled at Trump's handling of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. They paint Putin as a man who wants to invade all of Europe and therefore must be stopped by the U.S. What are they getting wrong? And do you think Trump may have walked us back a few inches from a nuclear conflict with Russia? I have never understood the left's embrace of the war with Russia and Ukraine, or embrace of Ukraine. And maybe that's because I was in Eastern Europe and Central Europe and when the Berlin Wall came down, so I was acutely aware of the promises that had been made to Mikhail Gorbachev, because they couldn't reunify Germany unless there was acquiescence from the Soviet Union. And the promises were explicit from Hans-Dietrich Genscher, the then German foreign minister, and James Baker, who was Secretary of State, that NATO would not be expanded beyond the borders of a unified Germany. And with the collapse of the Soviet Union and this fantasy on the part of American imperialists that we now had a unipolar world, in essence, the United States could do whatever it wanted, coupled with the fact that the big arms manufacturers could make billions, have made billions, reconfiguring the military in the old Warsaw Pact to make their militaries compatible with NATO, we violated all of those promises. And Ukraine was always the red line. You know, the historical trauma that the Russian people have felt is real. They were invaded largely through the Ukraine 3 different times, first, of course, by Napoleon, but then in the First and the Second World War. And there's a WikiLeaks leaked a memo that was written by William Burns, who was then U.S. ambassador in Moscow, later became the head of the CIA, who said across the political spectrum, there's no division, I'm paraphrasing, left or right, that incorporating NATO or incorporating Ukraine into NATO is something that all Russians find unpalatable. And, think about it. We're kind of baiting China, but think about if Chinese warships were going up and down along the California coast, or if in the old Soviet Union, Mexico became part of the Warsaw Pact, how we would react. Now, that doesn't excuse the invasion, which was a war crime. I was working at RT at the time, and I denounced it as a war crime. On the other hand, it was a completely preventable war. The persecution of the ethnic Russians in Ukraine was real. The ascendancy of fascist Bandera-loving Ukrainians is real, despite the fact that Zelensky is, of course, Jewish. So yeah, it was a war that never needed to have happened. But very early on in the war, Henry Kissinger, of all people, who of course I loathe, correctly said that the war has to be stopped. There has to be an exchange of land for peace. Otherwise, we are flirting with a nuclear disaster. So I do support the Trump efforts to end the conflict, although I watched the clip of Trump and Vance with Zelensky, and I felt it was appalling. I mean, they were thugs. I think that the motivation of the Trump administration to end the war is because they admire Putin and the autocratic system he set up. It's one they want to set up. But all totalitarian systems seek to disembowel the previous bureaucratic structure. And it's not that they are essentially freeing us from the excesses or even criminality of the FBI or anyone else. It's that they're making sure that the goons that are there are personally loyal to them. And that was true. I mean, that's what the fascists did in Germany. It's what the Bolsheviks did in the aftermath of the revolution in Tsarist Russia. It's what the Iranians did as soon as they overthrew the Shah. That's classic. And that's what's happening. I find the response by many in the left, including people I admire and like, just extremely naive. Where we're headed, and I'm no friend of the deep state, of course, and many of the critiques of the deep state I share, but these mechanisms of internal control are now being handed over, let's say in the FBI, to people whose complete and utter loyalty is to the figure of Trump, the demagogue. What little separation of powers there were, just like the social services. I mean, Head Start has been eviscerated. All of the programs that we have, which are very minimal compared to what most industrial nations have, those are being destroyed. The Consumer Protection Agency, EPA, and everything else. I'm a little stunned at how the left has responded.